The internet has blown apart lots and lots of industries and products, and the internet has basically ripped apart 80% of the advertising that went into the commercial sector, particularly newspapers, and that's gone. And so that paid the bills for the court reporters and the political reporters and the foreign correspondents and the beat reporters, and it's gone.
Which means that in both print and broadcast areas of journalism, the funding for the journalists who used to write quality, in-depth, specific rounds journalism is no longer there.
With the demise of the media business, with the loss of thousands of journalistic jobs, has also come the loss of a lot of areas that used to be covered, like the courts, like your local council. So we're not getting the same level of really good, credible, professionally analysed information that we once had.
It's a really serious dilemma for true democracies, because public interest journalism is a pillar of those democracies, alongside parliaments and government and the court system and justice system. Public interest journalism holds power to account.
We see the erosion of journalism in Australia and around the world as a critical issue for the health of democracy and our society.
As a country, if we don't do something about this, it's going to have really serious consequences for the stability and the quality of our democracy.
It's about the loss of what journalists do, which is that they are professionals. They go out, they collect information, they analyse that information, they interpret that information, they provide context around the information, which is incredibly important in a world where there's far too much information, if anything, and trying to make sense of that is really difficult for people.
If we don't bring the change that can sustain public interest journalism, we will be lacking in depth and quality and variety of opinion across Australia. Australia is already dominated by one media owner, and the other media organisations are merging. So there is a concentration of media happening.
Whatever issue or range of issues as a philanthropist you might support, just think about how that looks if the media is no longer there in any kind of force to be able to cover those issues, to expose wrongdoing, to analyse the issues, to put policies in front of policymakers. So that's a reason beyond any particular individual subject interest for philanthropists, I think, to think about public interest journalism. It's a conduit between any issue and the public and the policymakers.
And you've got to ask, how can we possibly make decent decisions as citizens who give a rat's about what's going on if we don't have good, credible information on which to base those decisions?
So philanthropy has a really important part to play in changing the policy and environment in which public interest journalism can thrive in Australia.
We can solve this problem. This is not an insoluble problem, and in the scale of the size of our economy or the importance of this issue, financially it's not a big problem. For example, France and Canada have addressed this problem. France addressed it more than a decade ago because they looked at it and said journalism is too important to our identity and to our democracy and to our kind of national culture and spirit to be allowed to fade the way it has been, and it's a market failure.
Philanthropy isn't big enough, will never be big enough to fund what needs to happen and be done in public interest journalism, but they can certainly push for an environment which will support a robust public interest journalism organisations.
I've been involved in Pidgey since its inception because I just believe passionately that we have a serious malfunction in our democracy.
Quality journalism is a cornerstone of our democracy, and we want to support PIGI because there is an obvious path forward, and that's to provide some public funding for journalism. I think it has some challenges, but I think there's a great opportunity for that.
PIGI's aim is to be a catalyst. It's not about laying out a huge blueprint for how the world might look in 5 years' time. It's about working with people to find ways forward with policy, with help with industry, with business models. There are numerous things that can go into this, but unless you have somebody driving it, we'll just have reports that sit on the shelf.